Next, we have Joe Spierer, who is the principal of Joseph Spierer Architects, based in South Bay of Los Angeles, where his work includes both ground-up construction and adaptive reuse. After working with noted architect Richard Landry, Joe opened his own firm to become the go-to architect for the Silicon Beach's tech-savvy residents. Please welcome Joe Spierer.
Thank you. You know, one of our main challenges, I think, it has been, and I think we just kind of came over this hurdle, is it does have to do with technology. We're using a software called Revit now, which is a three-dimensional design software as opposed to the standard two-dimensional CAD drafting that used to be done. And you know, getting everyone, all of the staff properly trained up on this new software to be able to design in 3D as opposed to the standard two-dimensional way has been a challenge. We've just gotten past that hurdle. It was an expensive transition, but it was worth it because in the end, what we can present to the client is much more robust and it's much more complete than in the thousands of years past, you know, that architects have been around. So, so from that standpoint, you know, that was challenging. And then now in this current market, I would say staffing, because architecture is very popular right now, and there's plenty of business to go around. And what that means is that staffing tends to be more of a challenge. So finding excellent people is key in this market. I can't say the number of times that I typed out a full, you know, what seems like a 4-page email explaining everything, and then deleted the entire thing, picked up the phone, and called my client. You know, I think email is fantastic. Texts are fantastic for certain transactional things, but when it comes to relationships, it has to be in person or in the phone. Besides Revit from an architectural design and construction document and presentation standpoint, we also use a software called ArchiOffice, which is by a company called BQE Software. And no, I don't work for them. But I found it at one point, and it was fantastic because what it does is it manages everybody's time. I have a 10-person architecture firm, and in order to manage everyone's time with Excel spreadsheets would be completely unwieldy. It also helps from a billing standpoint and from a communication standpoint, because it's very easy at the end of the month, if you're working hourly or if you're working on flat fee, to add up the percentages and add up the time and hit a button and send out lots of invoices to everyone. So I think having a management software like that is one of the most important steps that we had to take in order for us to be able to manage at the next level. Especially when we transferred over to Revit, one of the things that we lost temporarily was the two-dimensional, the pop from the two-dimensional drawings. Because when you're drawing in two-dimension, you're essentially, you know, it's an art piece. You're essentially painting it. And as soon as you get into 3D, you build the model, and the idea is it spits out these two-dimensional drawings. But in order to then get back what you had lost, you then need to add the detail back in a two-dimensional form. So you're right, there is absolutely that play between 3 dimensions and 2 dimensions, and outsourcing too. So actually, I started my practice at my kitchen table, and I had my first employee at my kitchen table with my wife walking around and everything. It was very funny. But you know, over time, I had to get a space for myself in order to be able to focus. And now that we have a bigger team, we absolutely have to have a space that where we can all collaborate. In fact, we're all in one big office, one big open space, so that we can all chat about all the projects together. You know, between buying and renting, I would say, you know, starting out for sure, I think renting makes sense, and buying can make sense, although it depends on what type of flexibility you need. You know, if you're the kind of business that needs to kind of ratchet up and ratchet down, then buying may not be the right move. Renting may be the only move that you can make. So I think it's a very personal choice that each company has to make. There's a fear when first starting a design business that is such that you want to kind of take everything that comes your way, right? When we first started our practice, we had one project, and I called myself, I didn't tell anyone this at the time, but I called myself a threshold architect because we took anything that came over the threshold. And I think, back then, I mean, we tried to do everything ourselves. We did structural analysis. We did all sorts of stuff that we probably shouldn't have been doing back then. But as we kind of developed and as our business kind of gained more confidence and we got, more clients, we specialized. We realized that you can't do everything yourself. You have to use everyone around you in order to be able to create a beautiful piece of architecture. And so I mean, we collaborate. I mean, sometimes it feels like 20 or 30 different people just during the design process to get something done, and it is incredibly important. I think the key is honesty and openness, right? So I think it comes right back to relationships because. What I did when I told him, first of all, when I started working for him, I said, my goal is eventually to start a practice. So he knew coming in, and then, even heading out, I said, so I'm considering going out on my own. I'm considering going and trying something else. Instead of just coming in and saying, here's your 2 weeks notice. So I think that makes a big difference, is having that dialogue. And it's a little bit scarier from an employee, which is why I think they tend to surprise their employer upon exiting more often than not. Because, I mean, I'm sure the fear is that somebody would fire you on the spot if they knew you were heading out. So, but I would say the biggest thing is always have the relationship in mind. Always try and maintain the existing relationships that you have instead of discarding the ones you have and moving forward, because it's some of the oldest relationships end up paying off in the long run.